Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today with the Clinician Engineer Hub, bridging the gap between medicine and engineering. And for our webinar today, I'm very excited to have Massimo Gaetani here, a systems engineer and entrepreneur based in Cambridge. And he's been in the Cambridge ecosystem for several years now and is a continued mentor at the Judge Business School. So, Massimo, very excited to have you here today. And today's talk is going to be on systems engineering, which I think is a very valuable topic for clinician engineers. So, over to you, Massimo.
Thank you, Neil. Pleasure to be here, and I have put together this simple presentation. As you mentioned, I'm an engineer. As a background, I studied engineering. I was a systems engineer for about 10 years before I decided to look at more interesting, well, in my opinion, more interesting aspect of actually running businesses. It was not purely the engineering part of it, but I remember the very first CEO of a company I was working for was a large engineering company. He was a mechanical engineer who became a CEO. And I remember one of the things he said once, we were in a large meeting, and he said, people, remember, an engineer is always going to be an excellent entrepreneur because he can apply system engineering to business. And this was about 40 years ago, and I still remember this as if it was yesterday. So I was pleased when we had this conversation about this talk to actually put together a few slides that actually highlight this aspect of system engineer and a business perspective, aligning technical expertise and strategic goals. So here we go. A bit about myself, just one slide, I promise. I'm a professional coach, so I do coaching, business executive coaching usually with entrepreneurs or owners of businesses or executives within companies. And I've been doing this since 2007, on and off. I say on and off because sometimes I put this in the back burner to do other things like starting small companies and growing them and then selling them and stuff like this. I've been for 15 years, in my previous life, 15 years, I was in senior management level in various companies, a couple of board positions in sales, marketing, and business consultancy. I've been running my own businesses since 2010, and I've been involved with Judge Business School at University of Cambridge since 2009, where you and I met. And I have been more recently, last year or so, been mentor for Barclays Eagle Lab. So I help local, well, UK-based entrepreneurs to run their businesses for the better. So I'm also a keen martial artist. Since 1978, I've been practicing martial arts. I've been a coach since 1988, which for me has been a kind of an inspiration about how to run, how to coach people and why to coach people beyond teaching people how to punch and kick each other. This is what I do in my spare time. Still nowadays, I'm running a kickboxing club here in Cambridge. So, quick definition about system engineering. So, as I said before, applying system engineering to running a business is using systems engineering ideas and concept applied to that in terms of the design, the implementation, of maintenance of complex systems. So a company, however small it is, even a single person company, is a complex system with a lot of moving parts. And so it's important that you can consider this like an engine or like a machine, like a boiler, anything that has some control in it, some analysis of what's going on, and feedback loops and these sort of things. So we have a few key principles about the whole system, about understanding and management and managing the key parts of this system, making sure that there is communication in a business is fundamental to have communication within the various parts, and also having an approach about problem solving, which is structured and scientific, not just how I feel I go. So all these principles really resonate with me, and this is what I've been using all of my life. So if you have an understanding of a system, of a company, as lots of moving parts, lots of individuals trying to do the best of their ability, you can have a holistic approach. Ultimately, you have a main goal, which is usually providing wealth or creating profits, which can be used then to apply more research or doing various things, depending really what the company is about. But you can work on trying to analyze what is the best way to, what products shall I produce, what service shall I offer, how do I approach customers. So all the decision making can be used this way. Also, if you understand your processes, you can enhance the efficiency within the system, which again, you can enhance the efficiency within the company, how you manage it. And you can apply innovative tools. Obviously, different companies use different ways to do it. And by applying the same principles of feedback loop you can see in most engineering systems, like, I don't know, I mentioned before, boiler, you set the temperature at a certain level. You're going to have a system that says, okay, heat up the water until it gets to a certain level. Very simple principle. The same can be on customer satisfaction. Our customer coming back. How do we measure customer satisfaction? Well, first of all, we can ask whether they are satisfied. Second, we can see, because if customer come back, usually they are happy with what you're doing. There are a lot of different things that can be done, but the principle of a feedback loop that you can see in engineering always can be applied to these sort of principles. Obviously, if you use an engineering approach, you can apply that to planning. How do you plan a marketing campaign, for example? It can be applied based on knowledge, based on the demographic you want to do it. So you can identify what needs to be done and applied. And then obviously you can design, but design can be like I design a product, but it could be also the way I design processes and procedures within a company. So that always applies, and you can always use that feedback loop. So do something, test it, and feedback into the design whether you want to improve that product, that service, this extra offer, this bundle of services you can do. There are lots of different things that this simple concept can be applied to. When you implement, you say, if you think about the engineering of installing machinery, for example, I was in the machinery business for 15 years. When you go and implement, you make a project about a production system, you go and put it in a factory, you do the implementation, you do the installation, you make sure that the system works. The same principles can be applied to a company. You decide to plan a new product, a new service, you go and start running it, servicing, and see how it works, and use this to actually bring back better results. And maintenance, obviously, maintenance in engineering is about keeping a machinery or plant or production system working. In business, maintenance is about making sure that all of your wheels within the mechanism keep moving in the best possible way. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated in running a business because you have people involved. You have people, and people are not necessarily linear machines that in a motor, if you put, I don't know, X amount of current, it always works the same way. The same three different people, you give them the same input, they will react in a different way. So the running a business and dealing with people is a lot more complicated than actually implementing a simple engineering control system. But again, I hope it gives an idea of how this could be applied. Obviously, you have challenges in everything in life. When you apply, you have challenges. So I mentioned before boiler because because I had a problem with my boiler here this morning. So I had experienced the complexity of making it work. But obviously, a company, particularly when we start talking about a company with many departments, and many different people, as I mentioned before, it becomes a lot more complex to manage, and the systems and the procedures you put in place are a lot more complicated than what you would do to manage a simple electronic or mechanical or device. When you're running a company, you have uncertainty. You're never in a certain situation where you know that you do something and that exactly will happen. You have approximation of that, and so you need to be, as a person who runs a company, you need to be able to manage and deal and live with uncertainty and work with that. Obviously, skilled systems engineers not necessarily directly apply to managing a business. If I have a bunch of mechanical engineers, it would be great to manage complicated mechanical systems. If I copy and paste them directly into a fintech company, they might find difficulty in running it because of the difficult language, the difficult jargon. But in general, an engineering mind, a person who has been raised as an engineer, skilled as an engineer, work as an engineer many years, will naturally plug into a management system in a very simple, very direct way, in my experience. The opportunities that come out of this situation, obviously, you have increased demand for complex systems. Whatever complex system a company can be, you can plug in some of this concept. And in general, if you have a system which is well planned, you will see that you can make sure that you don't have any wastage. Therefore, you got the cost saving that can derive from that. And again, business performance can be improved by having tight closed loop, which makes sure that everything that happens can be measured, and what you can measure in general you can control in, and so you can feed back into what the company in this case needs as a feedback into from what you have measured in terms of output. And again, we'll get to my conclusions. As I said, this presentation is a very simple one, just to touch base on that. So system engineering is a valuable tool for businesses of all sizes. You can apply system engineering concept to various departments or to all companies if you want to. And you can obviously enjoy having embraced an engineering approach to a company, efficiency, innovation, and hopefully customer satisfaction. I firmly believe that investing in engineering expertise is essential for long-term success. I am an engineer turned entrepreneur, and I've been using the very basic systems engineering concept to all the companies I have running, which sometimes makes it difficult for people that work with me working, because they are not necessarily all engineers, people that work with me. In fact, not in the last, say, 10 years, I haven't worked with any engineers directly, so it's difficult sometimes to explain how I want things to happen. But I prepare detailed procedures, and I try to run it literally like an engineering company. This is the procedure about how we welcome a new member of staff. So I wrote all these procedures, even if my company is very small, and it helps because I don't necessarily have to repeat myself very much, and that's it. So
Fantastic.
this is the few slides that I prepared and the presentation I did to prepare for this little chat with you, and I'm more than happy to continue the conversation.
Certainly. Well, thanks very much, Massimo. That's a very fantastic insight into systems engineering. I have a couple of questions.
Sure, go ahead.
So I really liked the point that you made systems engineering wise around waste and efficiency.
Yeah,
And so if we're talking about the NHS, or we can avoid the NHS, we can talk about healthcare in general.
sure.
We do see time and time again, there's a lot of issues around waste and trying to
Yes.
improve efficiency. So, not to put you on the spot, but because engineering obviously involves machinery, let's talk about something that I do a lot. So, I do quite a bit of endoscopy, so using
Oh, yeah.
cameras to look inside the digestive system.
Sure.
And would you say, or what advice would you give from an efficiency or waste perspective if you were to, say, be recruited to, map out how you could improve efficiency and reduce waste when it comes to machinery, diagnostics, devices in a general sense? What would be
Well,
the initial steps to take
w-
for clinicians?
well, thank you for the question. That's not a very easy. It's obviously not a very easy question to answer. No, I don't think is a very difficult question to answer. In general, I think every case needs to be analyzed separately because in general, sometimes I notice it in my own little clinic here, in my own little company here. Sometimes people come out and out of the blue they say, "Oh, you know, this is not the way it should be. You should do that." And very often I reply, "Yeah, thank you. I think it could be a good idea." However, don't think that one day I said, I'm going to open a clinic. I had no idea what a clinic should do. So I have started and I've been applying these principles of feedback in terms of like seeing something that works or doesn't work. How can I make it work better? And feeding back into the system so that just about everything we do is a procedure that has been the result now of 15 years. So I can imagine that,
Makes sense, yeah.
yeah, I can imagine that in NHS, many or in the healthcare in general, many of the things that happens are usually the result of a history. So, for example, I can make an example. You're going to be very familiar. For example, many years ago, transfusion was done in a fairly lousy way, I guess, and that's why there have been a lot of situation with contaminated blood has been spread around. Many people have been infected by various diseases. So at some point, somebody said, "Okay, now I assume you are the doctor. You're going to tell me every blood that has been made available for transfusion gets analyzed before being passed on to other people." I can imagine. So this is something that obviously something bad has happened and a procedure has been adopted to improve the safety of the people gonna use the bag. So going back to your initial question, I would start with analyzing where are the wastage and why the what are the wastage caused by. So obviously, when you do an endoscopy, I guess you have some probes or some. Sorry if I slaughter the terminology of your tools, but you have some probe or some piping that is sent down the people esophagus, and these are probably disposable. Yes, this
So the biopsy part is,
yes,
but the camera itself essentially gets
yes,
placed in with
sterilized.
yes,
Okay,
sterilization
so I
machines. Yeah.
would say analyzing where. So if somebody called me in and say, okay, we are wasting X amount of thousands of pounds or millions of pounds a year by doing this, where could you analyze? So first of all, it's useful to analyze how you got to this point. Many people have taken decisions. Very often, different people take different decisions without talking to each other. So the system might be over careful or over redundant so that there is a lot of wastage because nobody has worried about understanding what the doctor said. Oh, we throw away lots of stuff that perhaps we shouldn't throw away, or the amount of I don't know, if there is a device which is this big and gets all thrown away, maybe the only part which is relevant that should be thrown away is a small percentage. And I think that would be talking maybe to 10, 15 doctors in your position and say, okay, if you could save something, where would you suggest you would do the saving. So I would get the expertise from the person who is actually using the part, using the machine, or seeing the wastage, because you might care that there is a wastage. Many people just say, well, I'm just following procedures, I'm not interested. I am a natural problem solver. So wherever I see something that doesn't work, I always think about how can I fix it? So I go and try to fix things, which in my own company is very easy. But if I went back nowadays to work for a large company, I would have serious problems, because my natural instinct is something doesn't work, I fix it. And if you work in a large company and a bulb goes off, you have to call an electrician. That bulb costs you £50 because it's £3 for the bulb and £47 for the electrician to
Oh,
fix it.
yes. I know, very
So
true.
I would, yeah, sometimes it's not even the local point that needs to be fixed, but is a much greater analysis of what should be done. And sometimes you need to take an approach of a holistic approach. And in the case of the bulb, instead of having an electrician, which comes on in once every time a bulb goes, you can say, okay, we could actually, as a hospital, we could recruit, probably they have it. I'm just not saying. You could have, a maintenance department, which I employed. Yes, okay, they cost you maybe £100,000 a year. But if you analyze how many bulbs gets replaced in a year, you could find a scope for having a maintenance person who is employed full time and does nothing but going around and changing bulbs. In a place like Addenbrooke's, I would say it could be a full time job when you have a very large hospital like that. So this would be my approach: analyzing why and what gets wasted, explore the expertise of the people who are currently experiencing the wastage, and then feedback into the system to say, okay, if we do this slightly different, maybe you need to talk to your suppliers who are happy to sell you a probe that costs £500, while if they have to sell you just the disposable part, it would cost £50 for them. They have all interest in raising the prices. And this is a problem. I was talking recently to a doctor in the States. This is where in the States everything is inflated to the absolute maximum, because they have everybody involved, apart from the patient, have interest in everything costing as much as possible. This is where I see it. They have insurances who are, their mission is to make money for their investors. So a procedure which would normally cost £10,000 is inflated to £250,000, just for the sake of paying a doctor who works for 6 hours and make £100,000 for that operation, and so on and so on. It's mind-boggling.
Definitely a different ball game in the US, clearly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
today's a very interesting day, but we won't we won't make it.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yes,
I was
today.
thinking, if you have time, just for
Sure. Yeah, of
question.
course. Yeah.
I liked when you were discussing innovation. I'm a creative within a healthcare system, so I don't fit entirely, but I love the whole out the box thinking, and I've pretty much been always developing, new ways of doing things and different pathways,
Sure.
which eventually do get adopted. But when it first starts, it's always kind of what exactly is he doing, kind of thing.
Yes.
Would the same process apply to innovation? So when you spoke about, the systems engineering, you emphasized a lot about the feedback and the looping mechanism. Do you
Yes.
use the same principles if you want to be innovative, or would you say, okay, just let loose and see what happens, kind of thing?
Uh, yeah. Again, it's sometimes it's let's say sometimes innovation is driven by people who are not accepting the current reality. Okay, so people have invented, uh, what's his name? Henry Ford was saying, if I had to listen to my clients, I would have given them faster horses, because nobody imagined a car as being an independent vehicle that with an engine could run faster. So I think sometimes innovation should be dictated by the need of doing something different or better or faster or cheaper, or in the case of healthcare, more convenient. I mean, we have seen amazing adoption of, say, for example, I worked years ago as a coach with a company here in Cambridge who is specialized in reformulating drugs. So he said, I was talking to the CEO. I said, but what does your company exactly do? Because you're a pharma company, but you're not researching new drugs. He said, no, Massimo, but there are certain drugs that somebody has a daily intake of 3 pills, which are the size of a 50p coin. They're really difficult. And our aim is to find a way to make maybe a daily pill, which is very small. Or sometimes something can be just injected and it's very inconvenient to make an injection a day. So we try to find something that can be equally effective. So sometimes the innovation is pushed by the needs of people. So I think in general, engineering is not necessarily about innovation in terms of inventing new things all the time, but engineering can help you analyzing how something works and try to break apart the various parts, the components, being it a procedure or a service or an operation, and try to find the most painful, the most expensive, the most energy consuming, the most inconvenient path, and then try to say, okay, can we replace it? Sometimes innovation also comes nowadays, there is a lot of it. Americans used to be very good. Americans were the first country to some extent try to put together people from very different backgrounds, say a doctor, a philosopher, and a life scientist. And these people think in a completely different way, and sometimes they approach the same problem in very different ways, and that's how you get the innovation, thinking about something very different that other people don't think. So going back to your question, the innovation can be helped by trying to kind of break apart the components and just think about which one is the one that might be requiring an innovation or requiring a change in procedure. In the case of healthcare, I think sometimes certain procedure. Think about years ago, if you needed to have your cartilage fixed because you had a broken cartilage your knee, it was a long. I'm old enough to have seen friends of mine, 35, 40 years ago, being operated, not being walked for 3 or 4 months because it was open apart and nowadays keyhole surgery you walk on the same day. My sister had a cartilage fix last year. 3 weeks later, she went for a 5K run. So this have been amazing innovations about thinking how to be, what are the key components, in this case, the least possible disruption to the patient, and try to make sure that the patient can recover very fast rather than having a big operation that will require a lot of healing, a lot of recovery, a lot of rehabilitation.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, thanks again for your time. I think this is really a wonderful talk, and clinicians interested in the engineering space certainly will find this very valuable. So thanks
It's
again.
my
Matteo.
pleasure.
Appreciate
It's
having
my
you.
pleasure.
And I think you are obviously available on LinkedIn, so certainly reach out to him.
Yes.
I'm sure he'll have a lot of people knocking at his door.
Anybody who needs help, just give me a shout. I'm always happy to chat. Thank you very much.
That's it. Okay. Well, bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.